So welcome everyone. That was a bit of a bio that Hindusha shared, and essentially I went to school, typical bachelor's of science, and then did my MBA after that. And even just in the breakout room when we were talking about just, when you start off in school and you start off in this sort of structured way of living life, and then you start blossoming and coming out into the real world, you get lost. You get lost in all of that because you don't have people around you sort of telling you how things should be and this is how life goes, right? And it can be a bit daunting when you start getting into that transitionary period of life. And you can almost understand when you start hitting your 30s why a lot of people hit a little bit of a mid-quarter life crisis, okay? Because they're figuring it out and then sort of things just hit you where it's a bit overwhelming. You're growing into yourself, you're becoming more of who you're supposed to be, your kind of truest self. And you will see that I embed a lot of like spiritual pieces into this because I believe we are spiritual beings living a human experience, and then you layer all these conditionings that we have in our culture, our family, society, people around us, and then it's very easy to lose yourself in that and all of a sudden feel like you're just spinning in your wheels. Something I'll share right away, I'm pretty practical. There isn't going to be anything that's rocket science to you. It may very much feel like things that you've heard before, but I'm one of those people. I love different people pretty much teaching me these core life lessons, and you'll hear them from different motivational speakers and mentors that it will sound very similar, but they've applied it differently in a way that works for them. And that's what I want for you today, to hear what I have to say. I will be as personal as I can be and help you use this in a very practical way. So today on goal setting, it's really about how do we create the goals and how do we achieve them. And one question I'll ask, and if you're nervous, that's okay, but just take a wild guess. Does anyone know the difference between a vision and a goal? And put your hand up or unmute your mic and just speak, because I'm just looking at my slides and I have a few faces beside me. But I want to get your take on what you think the difference between a vision and a goal is.
Vision is something long-term. Goal could be short-term, and you work towards reaching it.
Thank you. So yeah, you're close. So a vision is how what I will describe for you is that for a vision, it goes past a lifetime. Okay, it's one of those things that you actually, when you really think through it, it may not even be something you achieve in a lifetime. It's so broad. You can almost describe it all, but it's not necessarily a lifetime thing. It's something that you can actually attach your goals towards. So your vision is a picture of your ideal state. It is your what. What is it that you're trying to achieve? And I'll give you examples of what my vision is, and then you will understand. You're like, yeah, that's probably not something Yvonne can achieve in her lifetime, but it guides me. It's what I work towards, and it guides my like mission, my goals, kind of my dailies, or when I feel lost, I have like this vision that I work towards. So a vision is sort of a picture. You can almost write paragraphs about it to describe it more and more for people. Your goals are your how. It's like, how are you going to get there? And it starts actually having a timeline to it. Vision, you can't really put a timeline to it because it's so big. It's so like a big, odd, like big ass goal that you're just like, I don't know if I can get it, but I'm going to work towards it. And your goals, you can actually see the end. You can see the timeline there. You can work towards it. So that's the difference between goals and a vision. Okay. So one of the things that before you even dive into this whole goals piece, and we touched into this a little bit in the breakout room I was at, it really is about figuring out who you are, who do you want to become, or who are you trying to work towards, and what does that look like? And then as you picture that, and I'm a very much a, so I don't have a vision board. I know people talk about vision boards, but I am very picturesque. So I actually collect a lot of pictures. I store it in my phone. I have these little files of like things I really like. And that's how I store pictures in my mind. But how do you get there? And then I start writing it down. So the goals are your how, and you're starting to break it down, and it may be in different pockets in your life. Okay. So this is tip number one. When you're starting to write down a goal, make sure the goal actually makes you stretch. Okay. So you can't be writing something you accomplished yesterday just to say, like, check, I achieved a goal, right? It makes you feel good. Those checks do make you feel good, and we'll get to that. They give you those little boosters or hormones, those, things that just give you that spark. You're like, I did it. And you can do that. But when you're actually setting your goals that help you achieve that lifetime vision of yours that you're working towards, you want to make sure the goals make you stretch. You've got to feel some pain through that. And you got to feel like, okay, if I achieve that goal, I am that much closer to my vision. Okay. So one, make sure your goals make you stretch. Guys, pause at any time, unmute your mic, interrupt, and ask me questions because we can make it more practical, or you can wait to the end. So tip number 2, okay? You're gonna have to write down your goals. Now, I know it's not something that again, it's not rocket science. You don't have to make it a huge task. You can get a planner like me. This sounds very nerdy, right? I like those like chapters planners, but I don't actually use it every day. And I was even talking to group 1. I'm very much about figuring out a process that works for you. So I define myself as someone who's it's like I've got like these terms for myself that are very like it juxtaposes each other. So I'm kind of like a wild horse inside. Like if I find I'm in a cage, I just want to break apart. So I try not to set goals for myself that make me feel trapped. Okay. So if I find that I'm following this and it's making me feel like trapped, I'm not writing in this. But what I definitely do is at the very least once a week or once every 2 weeks, I touch this book and I remind myself what my goals are. What am I working towards? And especially those times that you're feeling lost. And I'll open this at some point and show you. I can get a bit crazy in here, but it helps me retain my goals in my body. There's something about writing it down, pen and paper, and this is just something that I can't explain, and I'm sure there's science behind it. But when you write it down, your body absorbs your goals, and when you look at it, it retains in your mind because you start picturing things or seeing things in your environment that start aligning to your goals. And if you're not reminding yourself of those goals or finding a way to write it down, it can kind of just be lost, right? And then you find yourself in the same position a year from now. So write down those goals and then help it motivate you when you look at yourself, right? And make sure you use the writing down to keep you focused. Okay. Are there any questions so far? I really just have 5 tips. So I want to save a lot of time for conversation. So this one has, anyone heard about SMART goals? Okay. So again, practical, like I went to, did my, master's in business. We always talk about SMART goals. And essentially when you're now writing a goal down, and you don't need to get too, neurotic about this, but start thinking about being specific, making sure it's measurable, that is attainable, and it's realistic. I put attainable and realistic together. The whole point about attainable and realistic is to make sure you don't frustrate yourself. And then make sure it's timely, like actually put it in your schedule, work towards it. So if you're saying in 6 months, this is what you want to achieve, then actually now start breaking it down for a month or a week. And then check yourself when you go back, oh, how far did I go? And this is where I'll talk about later about being flexible, but set a time and then actually work towards it. So be specific. The specific is to actually make sure, and I'm just going to refer to my notes really quickly, is that you actually have a greater chance of achieving your goal the more specific you are. That's just how it works. The more specific you are, the more tangible it is, the more you can actually explain that goal to someone else. If you actually are courageous and you let yourself do that, the more likely you're going to achieve it. When you measure it, you start holding yourself accountable. When you make sure it's attainable and realistic, you're not going to frustrate yourself. Okay, you're going to say, okay, like, I can do that, and I can do that in 3 months. I'm not going to do that tomorrow, get that achieved tomorrow, but 3 months is very much a likelihood I'm going to achieve that goal. Okay, and then timely is making sure you actually set times towards it. So 4, and this leads to actually being courageous and not being fearful about failure. Okay, and there's a lot to be said about being held accountable to your goals. So the way I'm able to be accountable, and I'm a bit of a chatterbox with the people I trust, is that I actually share my personal and professional goals with my close friends. And so it's never lost. It's not something that just sits in my mind. It's something that a friend can even say 5 years from now, you talked about that. I remember you talking about that. And you're there now, right? And so when you have people you trust, and I say trust because I understand the feeling of sharing something and then feeling like someone may actually not shame you for it, but you're embarrassed when you don't achieve something. And those aren't people you trust, okay? So I'm talking about people you trust. It may be your parents, it may be a sibling, and it may be a close friend. But actually I would challenge you to have at least 2 to 5 people in your life that you talk about your goals, either subtly in a conversation or write out like, these are the 5 things I want to achieve and I want to share with you because I trust you. There's a book called, and I'll just recommend this book, called Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. And so, you know, there are a number of different inspirational leaders that I like to follow. And this book hit me. And one of the things that it hit me was I tend to be a very trusting person. Okay. I mean, with wisdom, you realize trust is not something you just hand out right away. But I'm also not someone to distrust. Okay. I tend to lean on, great, let's make this work, right? And my arms are open. And then I have friends that are the other extreme. But this book really put to perspective, and it has a quote actually, and I can't again quote it specifically, but here's the imagery, that when you're in your life fighting your battles, right, and you're the center of that attention, you're in the middle of that battlefield. Don't worry about all the people in the nosebleed section. They're not the ones that you need to worry about. So don't worry about those perspectives. The ones that you really want are the ones that are ready to get in the battlefield with you, right? And those are the people you trust. The people who have your back, who motivate you, who are happy when you're happy, who are happy that you're successful. They are not sitting there going, why not me? They're there, they have your back, they're in the battlefield with you. Those are the ones that you want to talk about your goals with, so that when you are struggling and you're frustrated, they're also the ones that motivate you to achieve it. Okay. So this is a big one about being held accountable, because it is part of how you actually achieve your goals. Okay, so I'm gonna just share some pieces of advice. Is get ready to work hard, okay? So it's not about just, you know, this beautiful little flowery book from chapters that, you know, my writing and it all looks pretty with stickers. That's great, okay? That's great that you can actually write down your goals and you're like, this is where I want to go. But actually be ready to work hard. So it doesn't have to be 24/7 that you work hard, but if you actually are serious about your goals, you actually need to wake up early. It may mean that you have to have a quick run or walk in the morning because your spirit is better, your mind is clear, and you're more focused. You got to start putting in the physical, mental practices that help you achieve your goal. Because there is something to be said about mind, body, spirit all working together to achieve that goal. You have to be in spirit to do that. And I know those times when I'm not eating healthy and I'm not moving. Okay, I'm not aiming to be a supermodel, but I definitely know when I'm falling off the radar of my health. And I know that I'm just starting to feel sluggish and things like that. So I start waking up in the morning an hour earlier than the kids. An hour earlier than even getting the kids ready, their breakfast and things, just to get a walk in the morning and starting to feel good about myself and focus on the goal. So those are more the physical aspects. The other piece I want to talk to you about, and this is really mainly because we are in the Sri Lankan culture, and you know, we are brown and we live in a country that's predominantly white. And this is something I would never put in the notes, but be serious about the fact that just being the background you are going to have to work 5, maybe 10 times harder than your colleagues. Okay. So the reason I say that is don't look to the colleagues to you or your friends who are left and right of different ethnic cultural backgrounds, especially if they're white and they're Caucasian, as oh, I can just work at the pace they are. I've never functioned that way. just because of who I am. But I've even realized even more in the workforce and in the structures that I work, that those of us that are of an ethnoculture background will have to work harder. You're just going to have to prove yourself that much harder to make sure those leaders select you when they naturally think of the next best person. So it's just my world in diversity, inclusion, and equity that wants to reinforce for you that you're going to be entering a workforce, or you probably already are in a workforce where you may just sit and compare, and don't do that. Just focus on your journey, realize the background you are, the inequities that exist, and the things you're going to have to rise above to achieve the goals and the things you want to get to. So that's just, some pearls of wisdom from someone who's much older than I want to admit right now. So something else, sorry, that's probably just an extra slide. Some other pieces of advice that I'll just share with you, and this is just, again, things that I picked up and for you to just keep in mind. Be aware of your own cultural shoulds. So there's just it's a bit of a joke, where you sit there and you go, I should do that, and I should do this, and I should do that. And basically you're shooting all over yourself is what we say, right? You start saying things that really are external pressures that you actually have. And if you internally look at, actually just remember that every time you say should, and this is a good one, even as a parent or as a colleague, or when I just feel like I want to blame someone else for a situation I'm in, anytime you say should, just pause. Because that is actually a whole bunch of external conditions that are put into why you think a situation should be a certain way. So keep that in check. I should do this because that is what success is. I should do that because that is what my friends are doing. I should do this. Check yourself. Realize that when you're creating that vision and your goals, that you're really trying to figure out what success looks like for you, who you are, the path you're going to live, and what does success look like for you. Not what does success look like for your parents. I know that sucks. What does success look like for you? And then work towards bringing the people you love on board with that. Okay? I'm telling you, you will feel so much better in life when you realize what success looks like for you is different, and you are going to stay true to that. Because all of a sudden that whole comparison thing, someone having a certain kind of car or a certain title, doesn't bother you anymore, because you realize, I don't actually want that position. I've always followed what I want to do and what I think success is. And you don't feel that pressure anymore about achieving other people's dreams, because you've always figured out what success looks like for you, right? And so take that first point as check your own cultural shoulds when it comes to defining success for yourself. Number 2 is don't frustrate yourself. When you set your goals, be flexible. Let go, let God is what I say inside, is that at some point you have to let go. There's some things that will frustrate you about structures or things that you're working with, and you want to fight with people or ruin sort of these good things that you have going for yourself. So just at some point you need to step back and let go. You might need to redefine certain things, redefine certain goals, because it doesn't align with who you are or the time or the phase in life you are. Just so keep that in mind. Don't ruin meaningful relationships in the process of achieving your goals. So it can be lonely on top, right? So as you're in leadership positions, and I have to honestly say that I don't feel lonely on top. I've always prioritized actually my close colleague relationships and personal relationships, that even though I have to make decisions on my own and I have to lead a team on my own, I don't feel alone. And that's a big deal, okay? You can, and I know that these cliche terms, enjoy the journey when you get there. Yeah, that's fine. But what I mean is when I come to something tangible, don't ruin your meaningful relationships, those people that you trust. Like I have had friends that I've just sort of lost through time, right? Because you realize when you're in a tough time, and not that you're cutting anyone off, it starts dwindling down to who your meaningful relationships are. Found myself at 2 a.m. in the hospital because of a back issue. I had my closest girlfriend drop everything just to be there. That for me is a meaningful relationship. She was able to show up, and and I have a handful of other friends I could have, but to me, I valued that. So don't ruin that. Make sure you keep your meaningful relationships as you grow and achieve your goals. And check your ego. Ask for help and ask for advice. Okay, you can't do it on your own. I didn't do it on my own. I know that I got to this place doing exactly what I want, and I'm going to keep doing that and keep growing in that. But I didn't get here on my own. I definitely had, I would say, informal mentors that helped me, gave me advice, kept me in check, really reminded me of who I am. Yvonne, I don't think that job in Toronto is what you should take because you really like spending time with your kids. So I remember not applying for jobs in Toronto that I knew I could get amazing title, but I had a professor say, you're going to be miserable. I know how you are. You're going to be miserable. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I trust that. Okay, so ask for help and ask for advice. I don't know, Hindusha, if I'm like running out of time, but this is my last slide.
No, definitely go for it.
Okay, so I just, a few just last thoughts is challenge yourself, have courage to ask the tough questions internally and externally, and work hard.